The Ivory Coast is home to 24 million people and borders the Atlantic Ocean on the western coast of Africa. Although there are several major cities in the Ivory Coast, such as Yamoussoukro or Abidjan, there are countless small villages scattered throughout the country that are separated both ethnically and geographically from each other, and separated spiritually from true life in Jesus Christ. Imagine living in such a village in the Ivory Coast. Because the Ivory Coast is only 300 miles from the equator, you would experience constant, hot, humid, and tropical weather. Also, likely everyone in your village would be struggling to make ends meet because of the third world setting, and also because of having experienced 2 national civil wars in the past 20 years. Multiple times a day, you would also hear the Muslim call to prayer. You would see Catholics gathering for Mass weekly. You would see animists attempting to worship false gods, and you would even see people trying to mix a form of Christianity with their animistic practices. Sadly, all of these people are living in hopelessness and in despair because they are separated from the true spiritual life in Jesus Christ. There are countless villages, just like this one, scattered throughout the country of the Ivory Coast. Specifically, around a town called Bégerville, just east of Abidjan, there are 12 villages. Each of these villages has access to Islam, Catholicism, animism, and other false religions, but none of these villages has a gospel-preaching church. My name is Josh Pate, and God has called me and my wife Katie, along with our daughter Allison, to be church-planting missionaries in the Ivory Coast of West Africa. In 2017, I had the privilege of serving a 9-week internship with veteran BIMI missionary Bob Mack. It was while I was on this internship that God burdened my heart for the opportunity of working within those 12 villages around the town of Bégerville to seek to plant gospel-preaching churches there. Within one village, the village of Anna, there's already a small nucleus of believers that God has banded together. And it is our desire for this small nucleus of believers to be the first church plant in the group of the 12 villages surrounding the town of Bégerville. In the spring of 2019, Katie and I traveled to the Ivory Coast for a 10-day survey trip where God confirmed in our hearts that He indeed was calling us to the Ivory Coast to be church-planting missionaries. Katie and I are excited to serve the Lord together overseas. God has specifically used 2 Corinthians 4:5 to confirm both our call to missions and to the Ivory Coast, where it says, "For we preach not ourselves, but Christ Jesus the Lord, and ourselves your servants for Jesus' sake." We will be working in the same general vicinity as BIMI missionaries Bob and Becky Mack and Christine McLaughlin, yet we will still be working independently as we endeavor to plant churches in the villages surrounding the town of Bégerville. Christine is a licensed nurse practitioner, and God has greatly used her medical ministry to open doors and soften hearts in the villages surrounding Bégerville. Truly, the medical ministry is access for a gospel-preaching church to be planted in the villages. We are sent out of Crossroads Baptist Church in Columbus, North Carolina, where we served on staff with Pastor Nathan Diedrich for a year and a half. As soon as our deputation ministry and French language school are completed, we will be moving our family to the Ivory Coast of West Africa. Katie and I would be grateful if you would partner with us in prayer as we seek to follow the Lord's leading in our first term in the Ivory Coast. Please pray with us as we learn the culture and the language, as we gain valuable ministry experience from veteran missionaries, as we help in the ongoing ministries in the villages and also seek to advance new ministries. And also please pray with us as we take steps to plant the first church in the village of Anna. We recognize the value of prayer, and we are grateful as you hold the ropes for us so that we can have an effective and long-term ministry in the Ivory Coast. We claim the powerful promise of Christ from Matthew 16:18, where He said, "I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it." We look forward to the day when we can see local, independent Baptist, gospel-preaching churches scattered throughout the Ivory Coast and previously unreached villages. We go forward simply with this desire to preach Christ and plant churches in unreached villages in the Ivory Coast of West Africa.